My name is Peyton Lauderdale, and I'm one of the co-founders of Gathering Hope. And I just want to welcome you to our new video series this year, which is called Slaying the Stigma. And our goal with this video series is to share stories of moms, not only so we can encourage other moms, but also so that we can empower the community around us to learn a little bit more about the topic and so that everyone can feel more supported. Rachel is our guest today, and she is the founder of Hope Again Collective. And thank you so much for being on here today.
Thank you so much for having me, Peyton.
I'm excited for our conversation together. I'm going to turn it over to you really quickly. I would love to know just a little bit about you and your family and your passion, and then tell us a little bit about your work too.
Sure. Awesome. Well, thank you again for having me. And I'll just say off the top of this that I love the heart behind this. I think it's just so needed that we do slay the stigma, and that we even call it a stigma, that exists. And so I just love that you're creating this space. And I pray that this is helpful for somebody watching out there. So my name is Rachel, and I want to share a couple of things about my story. I won't give the super long version, so don't worry. When I was in middle school, I turned a little room in my basement of my parents' house into a craft room, and I started making jewelry. It was a side hobby. It was something that was fun for me. But I just thought it was just that. I've always had kind of a knack for crafting and jewelry. So there's that little piece of my story. Then after I graduated from high school, I moved out to California, where I live now in Southern California. And I got my degree in broadcast journalism, because I have always loved stories. I've loved storytelling, the art of communication. I think that one of the most powerful tools that we have is one another's stories, and how we can learn so much about life, hope, grief, pain, every common human emotion through stories. And then after I worked in the TV industry for a couple of years, I ended up going to seminary, and felt like God was calling me to use these gifts of storytelling to tell his news, the only story that was actually going to have the power to change somebody's life. So I went to Fuller Theological Seminary and got my master's in theology and ministry. And so I kind of have these three buckets, if you will, these three themes in my stories. There's like this artistic outlet, there's this love for storytelling, and there's this deep call and desire to help women discover true, lasting hope, which I found through Jesus. And I have seen those three themes converge into one this past year for the first time. I was like waiting for a decade, like, okay, God, what do these random streams mean?
Yeah.
And that they all converged with something called Hope Again Collective, which is what I launched this summer. So when I started working on it in this past October of 2020, it publicly launched. And Hope Again Collective has been this outlet for me to give purpose to the pain of losing my first child, my husband and my first child. But it's also been so much more than that. And I'll get into that in a little bit. But so I am the founder of Hope Again Collective. I make handmade earrings that tell the stories of women who have lost babies, either to miscarriage or stillbirth or any form of infant loss. And with each pair, we share the story of the woman that the pair is named after. We also provide, this tangible representation for these women of their experience, their story, their baby that they can wear. And with each pair sold, I donate a percentage of the sales to a woman who is going through miscarriage, grief, needs counseling, needs help paying her medical bills, something that's a really practical need that we can help meet.
I love that. I just love that.
So that's where we are today. So I'm technically a pastor by trade. And my husband and I lead a church in the Chino area of California called The Bridge. And then I stepped away from my full-time job in October to be able to pour into Hope Again Collective. And I'm a mom. I've got our first baby is in heaven. We lost that child. It'll be 4 years this spring.
Okay.
And then I've got a son, Parker, who is almost 3, and a daughter, Eden, who just turned 1.
Oh my goodness, what a sweet little family.
Mhm.
I want to kind of jump back to the beginning of talking about the word stigma. I find it hard to believe that in 2021 that still exists.
Mhm.
And one of the reasons that I have just fallen in love with your work is because we share the commonality of love of story.
Mm.
And I just really find that stories are like they're paramount, right? And
Yeah.
that's how we learn to relate to each other. It's how we, learn how to have empathy for one another. We don't necessarily have to experience the same things, but like stories are what make us us. And
Mhm.
of course, I love the stories that you choose to tell.
Mhm.
It's something near and dear to my heart. If you could take us back to your pregnancy with your first child and share a little bit about that journey.
Sure. Yeah, this was, yeah, a couple of years ago now. And my husband and I have been married for a few years, and we kind of had this plan. And, I think so many of us women in the Western world perhaps feel like there are these milestones and markers, like, okay, go to college, get a job, get married, have kids. And life was following along in that trajectory. And we decided, yeah, I think we're maybe ready to go venture into this parenthood realm now. Um, I had no idea that miscarriage was as common as it was. I know we hear that a lot, but nobody in my family had experienced a miscarriage at that time, and in fact, none of my friends had. So I
Okay.
was the first in both of like my circles, family or friends, that had experienced it. So it was just this thing I heard about, and it seemed like a faceless statistic, really, to me.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I was about 8 weeks pregnant when I started spotting. And I remember even talking to people, other moms, and being like, okay, I've read online that spotting can be normal. Maybe I don't need to worry. But I had this gut feeling, which, as you know, like I'm sure you've had those too, and it's just like,
Mm-hmm.
sometimes you just have these feelings that you can't shake.
Yes.
And that is unfortunately the feeling that I had. I even remember being in my office the day before the spotting started at church, and feeling like I heard like there's no longer life. And I just thought,
Wow.
what? Like, okay, I maybe I'm just having a lot of anxious thoughts. I try to shut that down, but
Mm-hmm.
that weekend, I did start spotting, and it didn't let up. It didn't go away. It got worse. We went to the emergency room, did what we thought we should have done, go in, and were seen by a less than helpful physician who was on call, and basically said, well, it's either one of two things. Oh, I think he said three things. It's spotting and it'll go away and you'll be fine. It's a miscarriage and you'll probably lose your baby, or it's an ectopic pregnancy in which, could potentially be fatal to you. So just monitor it for the next 24 hours. And that's literally how we were left. They did an
Wow.
ultrasound, but because I was pretty early along, nothing really
Right.
showed besides the sac. So yeah, that was on a Saturday, and the next morning about 5 a.m. I just woke up, and out of the blue, I woke up and I went to the bathroom, and that's where I delivered our first child. As I look back on it in hindsight, it was really interesting because my mom was visiting. She was living in the Midwest at the time, and she had come
Okay.
out that weekend to visit. So I had my mom in our guest room, and I had my husband in our bedroom. So I had the two people closest to me, literally in the same, 700 square foot house. But I feel like God allowed me to have that experience at 5 in the morning when nobody else was awake, um, because it was just like me and him. And I know
Wow.
that might sound like a cold thing, but I have actually found some comfort in that. Like there was almost this intimacy of like, okay, I can have my my closest like earthly comforts here, but they're not really available. And it was just me and God in our little bathroom, and yeah, I would describe my whole experience as just blindsiding. I was
Yeah.
caught so off guard, knew nothing about this, knew nothing about how to process it, even how to honor and memorialize our baby without feeling like, is this weird? Uh, if I'm being really honest, and sometimes I still kind of
Yeah.
think that, like, okay, but I will say that the impact of this experience, it hollowed out a part of my heart, and grew me in so many ways because of this. My whole perspective on motherhood changed. Again, initially it was just like, what's next on the list.
Okay.
I wouldn't really say my heart was like, I have to be a mom. Like, I've dreamed about this since I was little. Like that,
Yeah.
I've been excited, but it wasn't like the end all be all for me.
Okay.
Losing a child put motherhood in perspective of, oh my gosh, this is a miracle. This is uh, the greatest gift that I will hold in my lifetime, the greatest honor to be able to be a mom. And so I initially felt a lot of that shifting as we went into those months of, man, now I really care about this, but I'm not
Yeah.
sure that it's ever going to happen. And that's, yeah, I really wrestled with hope for a while. And
Yeah.
yeah,
That is that is just that shift in mentality, like where you're saying, is this weird? But it's, if we believe what we believe about life, like that does change us. And there's nothing weird about grieving life, right?
right.
What were some of those ways? You said you kind of wrestled with like how to honor and memorialize.
Hmm.
Can you kind of share what you ended up, what did you end up doing?
Yeah. The first thing I did, which was, it felt really small, was I bought myself an ornament off Etsy for that upcoming Christmas. It was a couple months after we had lost our baby. And I just put, like, I think, we remember you, baby Lohman. One of
Mhm.
the things I wrestled with, and I honestly still wrestle with it today, was we never named our baby. And I wrestle now with like, is it weird to go back and give a name now? But I also feel like it would be really probably helpful,
Mhm.
especially now that we do have kids, and we want to talk about their other sibling, to be able to have a name. And I just feel like that would help make this life feel more real, because it was
Yeah.
and it is. Yeah, so the ornament was one small thing. I just bought myself a couple of meaningful tokens, like a bracelet, to remind me of God's strength carrying me through this. I never really arrived at like a big, meaningful, like, this is it type of
Mhm.
thing. And perhaps that's what led me to create Hope Again, because I just felt like, man, if I can help create something meaningful for women that I kind of felt like I never really found for myself, this
Yes.
can be one little helpful token in their grief journey, then I want to do this.
Yeah.
So, in a lot of ways, Hope Again Collective is my ongoing tribute to my child.
I Yes. I definitely agree with that. Um, One of the questions I have for you is, how do you, because I love that you share, the design of the earring and then a story. How did you go from knowing no one in your life to finding all of these women to share their beautiful stories?
Mhm.
Can you talk about that?
Yes. The first time that I talked about my story was, I was preaching at our church. This was a couple months after our miscarriage. And it happened to fit within the topic I was given to preach on. I think it was something about grief or encountering God and loss, or it was something that was very fitting.
Mhm.
And I thought, oh man, this feels risky, but I knew, yeah, I want to step out and share this. And so I shared for the first time publicly that my husband and I, and he was also a pastor on staff, that we had lost a baby. And really from that point on, God has brought a lot of women into my life who can say, yeah, I identify with your story and with your pain. I'll never forget talking to a woman in her 70s who came up to me after that and said that she had had multiple miscarriages and that she had barely told anybody in her life.
Wow.
And I just got this sense that, you and I still feel a stigma now in 2021 around infant loss, but I just got this deep sense that the stigma that she had carried for decades now,
Right.
and the sense of shame that it was like really heavy, and probably even more so, you know 40 or 50 years ago. And so I could see the pain, I could feel it. And yeah, since that point, I have just um, been intentional about not shying away from sharing my story when it's felt appropriate.
Mhm.
And because of that, it's just opened a door for so many other women to respond with me too.
Yes. Yeah. Um, I love that you're so open about it. There's so much freedom in someone saying like it just when you share your story, it gives someone permission to finally say like that
Mhm.
me too. And then
Mhm.
that person ends up feeling empowered and they shared their story. And I
Mhm.
just love that we have this ongoing um you know, trail of women who are kind of like trailblazing through this stigma. Even today, I think about women. I've had women come up to me who are, much older than myself and
Mhm.
share that same thing, um, of like it's just always so secretive.
Yes.
So um, I I think that like I talk about my other children, I wouldn't want to have to hide anything about them. And
Mhm.
so why would I want to hide, my other child in heaven?
Right.
Um, but yeah, I just love that you give people such a beautiful platform to do that too.
Thanks, Kate.
Um, Tell me what has been the most surprising part about your journey. So most surprising, and it can include like your entrepreneur journey as well. But what's been the most surprising thing so far?
I would say the most surprising thing has been, oh, there's been two things really. One has been encountering this stigma. Like I I have felt it, and then I've had small conversations, but I feel like every day now, especially with social media, I'm being connected with a lot of other lost moms.
Mm-hmm.
It just feels way larger than I thought it was. And there's this Ann Voskamp quote that says, "Shame dies when stories are told in safe places."
Mm-hmm.
And I've just found that to be so true about my own journey with hope again. That I mean, I think recently I'm getting about one story a day submitted through our website.
Wow.
Yeah, and so I'm just reminded of, wow, this thing that I sensed in my own experience 4 years ago, it's ringing true with women from other countries, other ages, other backgrounds. This is a universal experience that surpasses all of those categories.
Sure enough.
It's universal to the experience that we share as women who have lost children. So I've seen that, yeah, this felt need um, to have ownership over our stories, to let this shame be lifted, that it's much bigger than I thought. And then the second part of that, and it's also connected, has just been the response has been a lot stronger than I thought it would be.
Okay.
I didn't. I didn't imagine that as many women would have engaged with Hope Again as they have at this point in our juncture. We're almost about 6 months old.
I know it feels like, I mean, like just from my side of things, I'm like, it's only been since October. I can only
Yeah,
imagine what it feels like for you.
yeah, it's surreal and also sad. Like,
Yeah.
yeah, I posted something on our Instagram the other week, a quote that just came to me one night when I was reflecting, and I put something like, "Not every mom goes to the hospital and comes home with a baby." And the next morning, I looked, and that post had been shared like over 100 times and had reached like 14,000 accounts.
Wow.
And I was like, okay, wow, that I didn't see that coming. But I also felt like, oh my gosh, I feel a heaviness that many women can resonate with this pain. Um, it just breaks my heart, and it further encourages me to keep doing the work that you and I are both doing.
I think about the other side of that. That's you said 14,000
Hmm.
reach, right? So all, and those were all women who felt brave enough to say this, I'm one of them.
Hmm.
And there's so many other women who just they don't have that confidence yet to share
Hmm.
it. Or they've been told that it's not okay that they do when they've tried.
Right.
And so I just appreciate you saying that. And I think one of the most powerful things is like, is knowing that it is common.
Hmm.
That is comforting. Um, but at the same time, it's each one of our children, and there are some days where for me, like, I don't care if it's common,
Right.
because it's just painful for me right now. Um, but I love that quote. Um, is that in the book or the Ann Voskamp one?
I'm not sure where I came across it,
I'm gonna
but
have to find it because that's really
yeah,
beautiful. It really captures a lot of the work that we share.
yes.
Um, so now that you know a lot more women who've survived miscarriage or infant loss,
Hmm.
what is something that you would tell to a mom who's new to this
Hmm.
journey?
Hmm. Yeah, I love that question. I would tell a mom who's new to this journey, first of all, I'm so deeply sorry that you lost your child, that your child died, and that anything that you're feeling can, from confusion to uncertainty to, I don't know how I can get out of bed tomorrow. It's all normal. And
Yeah.
what I wish I would have probably heard, or what would have been really helpful for me, would have been if another lost mom who was further along on her journey could have told me, Rachel, it's not always going to feel the way that it does right now. And
Mhm.
so I'll just let that be to whoever needs to hear that right now.
Yeah.
It's not always going to be the way that it feels right now.
So
And I just needed that hope to know, okay, if another lost mom has gotten through this, that's not really something we get through. We grow
right.
through it. Like, it's not always going to feel this painful. It's not going to go away. It will change you. You will experience different seasons, ups and downs in your grief journey. That will stay with you.
Mhm.
But the pain will change, and it will take new shape, and it will form. And as crazy as this sounds, there will actually be, um, because I see it in all of the stories that come in. One of the last questions I ask is, how has your loss changed you as a woman?
Mm.
Positive changes that nobody would have wanted, nobody has asked for, nobody would wish this on anybody. But to be able to know that something even remotely redemptive can come from the deep pain that you are experiencing can sometimes just provide enough hope to get you through to the next day.
That is so beautifully said. I'm glad we've captured that on video. I think that I know there is another mom who needed to hear those exact words. I want to ask, this is one of the questions that I sent to you earlier, but what role has faith played in your journey, and like the way that you talk about it will change you?
Mm-hmm.
What role has faith played in all of that?
Yes, it's been a huge role. It's always a little bit interesting when you are a pastor and have a faith crisis yourself.
Oh, I'm sure that's, yeah.
So that's what happened. I even remember journaling in the weeks after our loss and saying, God, I asked you for a miracle. You didn't give me one. You didn't save my baby. I I read that you are capable of miracles. I hear that it happens in other people's lives, but I don't have evidence for myself that that is true of who you are. And I remember putting, what do you want me to tell people who ask about your ability to
Yeah.
heal and to do miracles? And I mean, since then, God has shown me we have journeyed. Um, we've worked out that argument together.
Yeah.
And my understanding of healing and miracles and redemption has really widened. But I would say that going through the loss of our child, it actually made my faith real for in a new way. Like I thought that I understood and that I was walking in an authentic relationship with Jesus.
Yeah.
Um, but man, like the grief experience, it really just hollowed that out. It put everything on the table. I think I was really honest with God for the first time. And I'm so thankful that I felt that I had that space to do so. One of the um, saddest things I hear is women who have all of these questions, doubts, anger towards God. They don't understand. They've got deep pain, which is totally normal, as they
Right.
should. But they feel like they can't go to God with it. They feel like it's a lack of faith to even
Yeah.
feel those things. And that going to God about them would be perhaps disrespectful. And they have been maybe brought up in a tradition that is kind of a little bit rigid in some of that. Like, are we allowed to
Mhm.
ask questions? Is doubt a sign of weak faith? I've just encountered God as like such a gentle, tender companion in my grief. He already knew that I was feeling all those things and thinking all of
Yeah.
those things. But it's like if you were to keep something from your spouse or from your best friend, you're already feeling it, you're already thinking it. And it almost creates a wedge in your relationship if you
Yeah.
don't voice it. And so, all that to say, yeah, my faith was like majorly refined through my miscarriage experience because it forced me into really deep, authentic honesty with God and our relationship. After just like a human friend or spouse, whatever, after you go through something really hard
Yeah.
and you've been in the trenches together, like, you can handle anything together, it feels like.
Yeah. It
So
really
my faith,
does. Yeah.
yeah, really shaped through this experience.
I resonate with a lot of what you said there. The refining of a faith is a very real thing after
Yes.
the loss of a child. And I felt, I've shared this with others before, but it kind of like you, like I thought the other stuff in my life before that was the hard stuff. Like, oh, I made it through. Like, yeah, but it turns out this, and I have
Yeah.
no idea what the rest of my life holds, but up to this point, this was going to be the thing that really tested it.
Mm,
But also at the same time, like have never, ever felt such an intimate presence as I
mm,
did
mm.
in like the deep rawness of it all.
Yes.
So yeah, I'm so thankful you shared that. And yeah, like the questioning, I think, is what gets us to the other side of,
Mhm.
you know, the doubt and all of that stuff. I think is almost essential for us to ask in order to have a faith that survives on the other side.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, you're so right. It's a great way to put it.
Um, so since our interview today is kind of serving as double duty of both encouraging and just as a way to like educate others who may not know how to support someone who's been through a loss or just have no idea any of the issues surrounding pregnancy loss,
Mhm,
what is something that you see that the community needs to know or could benefit from knowing in order to support our community?
mhm. Yes, also a great question. I think that one of the most impactful things could be intentionality about remembering dates. It's just
Mm,
like very practical, very simple, but if if you don't know the date of somebody close to you when they lost their baby, it is okay to ask. It's not like you missed your opportunity.
mm,
It's similar to how we remember, if we're close with somebody who's lost somebody in their family. Usually there's some amount of people that will reach out to them on that anniversary.
right.
But for some reason, well, I think I know the reason, because a lot of our babies, died before people had memories with them or took pictures.
Right.
It's much easier to forget that loss.
Yeah.
So uh, you're not there. There's usually also this fear of like, well, if I ask a woman about the date or a question about how can I honor your baby, or if I broach the subject at all, I'm going to make her sad and I'm going to cause her pain. And that's just not true.
Hmm.
We're already thinking about our babies all the time,
All the time.
especially on those anniversaries as they come up. We are actually just dying for somebody to recognize and remember with us. And so if you are friends or you're a family member of somebody who has lost a child, something that is can be super impactful would be if you just send a text on that anniversary date. If you put it in your calendar,
Yeah.
that's what I try to do. I just put it in the calendar on my phone so I get an alert. Okay, today I need to text Sarah. Tell her that I'm thinking about her and that I remember her son. It's very simple. Or send a card or send flowers. But to me, that gesture would mean the world. And because I've gone through a couple of anniversaries where I didn't have that. And I know
Yeah.
the ache of like, okay, everybody else is just walking on with normal life today. It would mean so much if somebody stopped and acknowledged my child.
Yeah. Yeah. That's I think you're right. So many people are worried that they're gonna make someone else like they're gonna make make them cry, right?
Right.
Like, can I just tell you the tears were already behind my eyes before you asked the question? You just enabled them to come out. And they needed to. So
Yes.
even if a mom does cry, it's really not the end of the world because
Yeah.
she probably needed that cry in the first place because those
Yeah.
tears are very healing and she needed the release that your question
Mhm.
prompted.
Mhm.
So, but I love that. Just practicality, for other people. Any other thoughts you have about that?
I would say in the initial weeks after a loss, and I know that you do great work in providing practical resources with those couple of weeks, that feel so tender.
Mm,
Um, Not to necessarily say I don't know what to do, or if you need anything, reach out, but to go ahead and do it in
yeah.
a non-invasive way, of course. But to have something delivered, it doesn't
Yeah.
have to be flowers. It can be something that won't die and wither away in a couple of weeks, as you and I have talked about.
Yes.
Um, It's just like, oh,
Please don't give me something to take care of or water or that will die, in my presence while I'm grieving other things that have died. Yes. I
yeah,
feel
but
strongly about that.
I know. And that I think needs a little bit more awareness, like to
Yeah.
hear from fellow lost moms, which I know is what you're working on, and it's going to be so practical and helpful. But to hear from our experience, hey, here's what would really be helpful. Here's something that may be less helpful. And, maybe some lost moms want flowers. So
Right.
each woman is going to be different in that. But I think the biggest thing would be, it's so gracious to put an offer out there. Can I do anything
Yeah.
for help? But oftentimes you just feel so paralyzed in your grief that you don't even know how to respond to that. And so you go without help. So in a non-invasive way, do something anyway. Have Uber Eats delivered,
Yeah.
talk to somebody close to this person, her husband, her friend, and say,
Mhm.
hey, I would like to book a massage for her. Or if she has other living children, hey, can I come over and watch your kids for 3 hours on Saturday so that you can go do whatever you need to do? Hey, I'm going to Venmo you $25 for your favorite
Yes.
place. Like, not so much an ask and wait, because that just feels overwhelming. Again, the heart is
It's a
beautiful.
decision. It's like I
Yeah,
can't make
yeah.
decisions about like whether or not I want to shower today. So like I can't make a decision on what I need from you right
Yes.
now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Practical needs, like the house still needs to be cleaned, groceries still need to be bought. But when you've lost a child, it just feels like you want the world to stop, and all of those
Yeah.
things still have to be done. But if you can be provide any of those things as a way to support the woman who's lost a child, it means the world.
Sure does. I couldn't agree more. Um, what about just parents specifically, like, um, or even let me rephrase this. So like we know the mom's needs are taken care of, and you may not, you may not know the answer to this question, but like, so there's another side to this. There's a husband or
Yes.
a boyfriend or something like that. So
Mhm.
like what we always ask questions about the moms, and obviously my heart is very tender for moms clearly, as is yours. um but what about dad? Like what do we tell people about how to support dad? What was that like for your husband, if it's okay to share his story a little bit?
Oh, absolutely. This is a phenomenal question. I'm so glad that that's like on the radar for your organization, and that
Yeah.
you are bringing light to that, because it is huge. And we
Hmm.
know statistically, or from the research that's done, that men grieve differently, especially, and this I found to be true of my experience. Sometimes the partner feels disconnected, almost like there's a desire to grieve and to join the mom in the grief, but because they didn't carry the baby or deliver the baby, their body didn't physically respond to the experience that happened. They, my husband, feel kind of just like this helpless bystander. Like you're just
Hmm.
watching this unfold. The person that you care deeply about uh, is absolutely heartbroken. And so you are so torn up about that. You want to take the pain away. This is your child, but you didn't have a bond with the child in the same
Right.
way that your partner did. So there's just like a lot of, I would imagine, confusion about, I want to
Sure.
support, I need to be on, I need to be strong because my partner is really hurting. That I think what happens a lot of times is that the partner's grief gets suppressed, the emotions that they're feeling get suppressed, or it comes out a couple of months later after they're out of survival mode. So, one thing that my husband and I did, and the therapist I was working with at the time, who had also miscarried multiple babies, suggested this because that it actually um, because we were grieving so differently, I found myself getting frustrated sometimes. My husband's name is Mark, and I
Right.
would, which is like not the emotion that you need,
No,
and more that you probably want.
like I
But
really just don't need this right now.
yeah, but there were days where I was like, am I going crazy? Because why can't I get out of bed? But you seem to be functioning just fine. Like, why are we grieving so differently? And why does this loss feel um, a very large difference in significance between the two of
Yeah.
us?
Yeah.
And so, one thing my therapist encouraged me to do was to have open conversations with Mark about it. So, before we would go to bed, I would say, hey, how is this affecting you this week or today? What do you think about our child? What do you think about this experience? Like, what are you fearful of now? How's your faith? What are you saying to God? Has
Mhm.
this shook your hope up? Like, do you still have hope that we'll be parents to children on earth? Like, I just entered a space of really honest conversation because it wasn't happening. Our grief was not happening in conjunction with one another. And so we had to carve out conversation space for that.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, that kind of your counselor guiding you through that kind of leads to my next question is what are some things that have helped you to heal and knowing that like ultimate ultimately we'll never be fully healed until we're with our children and we're with Jesus again. Like this is a journey, it's a long journey. But where have you found hope and what's helped you to heal?
Yes. For me, and I realize this could be different for other personalities, the more that I've been able to incorporate this as part of my story, the more healing and acceptance of it I've found. And what I mean by that is, I have a couple of really painful chapters of my story that all happened over the decade of my 20s.
Mm-hmm.
Some of those have been easier to incorporate in my story than others have. And I have found that when I can own something and be like, you know what, this happened. I didn't do anything to cause this. I am not a bad like person, or there's something wrong with my body, or I didn't like there's nothing wrong with me because of this. And I have to
Yeah.
tell myself that, like, this is just a part of my story. I didn't cause it. It happened to me, but like it's not going to define me. I'm not going to be stuck and held back by this. And I know that that might sound a little insensitive depending on where you are in your grief journey, but for
Yeah.
me, walking in that over and over again has been really helpful because, like that quote that I shared earlier, it's been so true for me. Like if I can say, yeah, this is part of my story, this is part of who I am, suddenly like there's not shame over it anymore.
Yeah.
And when I'm able to bring these significant, heavy chapters of my story before God, and I can say, God, like, can you show me themes in this? Can you help me see your hand at work? When
Mm-hmm.
I can see how parts of my story mirror the gospel, the story of creation, where things were created to be one way, good.
Yeah.
Like we were created to have living children. And then there's a fall. There are things that we are experiencing that are not as they are meant to be, that are not as God intended them to be. God did not desire for our babies to die. Like
Right.
that's just the simple truth of it. And this mirrors how God created his world to be, a paradise. Then
Wow.
all things apart from how he wanted them to be, obviously that causes him immense heartbreak, just like you and I have felt when things aren't the way that God intended them to be. And then we also see, okay, but the story doesn't end there. Like there's an arc, there is redemption. We see some of that redemption here and now on earth, but more so, we have this promise that full redemption and restoration of every broken thing is coming. So for me, as a follower of Jesus, like I have found immense hope in that has provided immense healing for me. Um, I'm not sure where I'd be without that. I really don't know, because I've looked to all the other sources that are competing for my hope. None of them have lasted or been able to fulfill
Yeah.
their promises.
Yeah.
So that's been healing. I know that might not seem super practical, but it's been a paradigm shift, an ongoing thing that I'm processing
Yeah.
through. When, then, when opportunities present themselves to share about my baby, to share about the pains and losses of my life and the ongoing grief, and I can say, hey, to a friend I'm having coffee with, I'm human and I've walked through valleys, and here's how I'm finding my way out of them, or I'm on stage doing it, or I'm sharing a social media post. It's like, oh, okay. Like, this isn't some scary thing that has to stay hidden in shame that I
Yeah.
need to internalize and feel badly about. Like, no, this is the life experience that I've been given. And if I can help another woman find hope in her own through sharing it, I'm also going to find this healing and confidence in my own story. That was long-winded. Sorry.
I don't think that I have ever heard anyone like so artfully weave the gospel into their story of loss, but like I kind of have fireworks going off in my head right now. Like,
That's how it was for me when I first saw the parallel. I was like,
yeah,
whoa,
I'm sure.
there's purpose. Potentially there's purpose to this pain, or like
Yeah.
I'm not the first person to experience this. Yeah.
Wow. Um, you could be long-winded all day if you wanted to. I just find the things that you say to be so very wise and relatable. Um, on the more practical side, are there any like Instagram accounts that have been helpful for you to follow, or books that you've read, or podcasts that you've listened to, those kind of things?
Yes. Well, I will say that I was a little bit late to the social media community of lost moms, but oh my goodness,
Oh, same.
it's an incredible thing. I was like, where was this a couple years ago? I mean, where was
Yeah.
I? Was lost and on Google trying to find resources when there are amazing accounts of women who do this work, this holy work, and enter into that space and make their story available and show up with resources and tips and just honesty about their story day in and day out. I think about Kaylee, who runs Every Mama's Heart. I think about Alicia Anderson. Um, I know I'm forgetting some, even like the Noble Papery, who makes this beautiful stationery
Yeah.
with these meaningful cards that would really be fitting to
They
lost
are
moms.
beautiful. They are beautiful. I just reached out to that. I don't know what her name is. I can't remember. I feel awful right now. But
Yeah.
I was like, I want to include this on our website because I just love your work.
Yeah. So they're just like this circle of women who are um, they're making meaningful things out of their pain, and so there's this community, and that's just been really huge. It doesn't offer answers, it doesn't offer solutions, but what it does offer is, hey, I'm another mom who's gone through what you've gone through, and you are not alone. And also, you're not just a statistic. Like, look, here's my face. I am one of the 1 in 4. And I think when we
Yeah.
can put a face to this elusive statistic, it can be so helpful. So there's that. And then another thing that was helpful for me, I use this book. It's called Grieving the Child I Never
Okay,
Knew.
I've got to read this. You're like,
Oh,
how I have not read this, I don't know. But like, she's out of the interviews that I've done, you're like the fifth person to say this book.
wow.
Okay, tell me what you loved about it.
So I went on Amazon and I searched, I forget what I searched, miscarriage resources. And I just found one that looked not super, sorry if this is offensive, that didn't look super cheesy because that doesn't help me.
Yeah.
I'm somebody who wants like
I know what I
honesty
want.
and truth, and it doesn't need to be all frilly. And
Yeah.
I just wanted something real, and honest. And she tells her story through this. But what I really like about it, what was helpful for me, and honestly annoying to me at the time, was that she ends with questions, like reflection questions, and space right in the book, which felt like it was forcing me to answer it, because I was like, well, I can't leave a page undone. So dang it, I have to do this. I have to process through it.
Oh
If
my
it
God.
was just questions and I had to go pick up a journal and write it, probably
Yeah.
wouldn't have happened. So
Right.
yes, I was at times annoyed that it was forcing me to do the hard work that I didn't want to do and address certain things that I didn't want to address. But one of the most beautiful takeaways for me in this book was she helped me see that God lost his son too. And I have had this hunch that our child in heaven is a boy.
Mhm.
And so when I read that, which of course, like, we know, if you are in the church, okay, God, lost his son on the cross, Jesus for us. But the way that she framed it, I suddenly had this light bulb moment of, God is not far off from my pain. In fact, he has walked the exact same road. And he is so near to me in this, because he gets it. He identifies. And yeah, that changed so much of how I viewed God in my own grief.
Yeah. When I learned that, and I can't remember what verse it was, but it kind of, I think it was in Romans, I'm not sure, but that essentially that Jesus has experienced every emotion that we have because he's human.
Mm-hmm.
And just knowing that, like you said, like God knows what it's like to lose a son. God knows all of the emotions because, well, he created us that too. Um, but knowing that we have that in common with God,
Yes.
wow, like he's a pretty relatable guy, and I hate to laugh when I say that, but it's like like what you were saying at the beginning, like can I even approach God with that?
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely you can, because God knows what it's like to feel that way.
Yes.
So,
Yeah.
wow. We talked about some good stuff today.
Yeah.
And that book, my friend Betsy, you're gonna have to go back and watch her interview because she talks about the questions in there, and she's like, "No, you answer those questions. I'm not answering." That's the way she says it. It's just like, "How dare you ask me that question? No, you answer it."
That's so funny. Yeah.
Oh my goodness. But those are the questions that, like, when they kind of like gut check us, those are the questions that we probably need to have asked of us. So,
Exactly.
okay, I'm putting it on my list. I'm buying it. When we hang up, I'm going to order it because I can't get around. I can't get away from it. It's apparently a really good one. Thanks so much for sharing your story with us. I want to ask before we finish, what's next for you? What's next for Hope Again Collective?
Yeah. Well, thank you again for having me, Peyton. And I just love the work you're doing. I believe in it. It's
Thank you.
necessary. You and Carol are the ones for it. So
I
want to just say that publicly.
Thank you.
You are.
Thank
And
you.
yeah. So
I think there's definitely days that I'm like, no, surely you meant someone else. So even though I have all this gray hair, I'm like, are you sure I'm old enough to do this? Like, this is for grown-ups to do. Oh, I'm a grown-up. I'm 40 next week. So I'm a grown-up, I guess.
Well,
thanks. Thank you for saying that.
So, yeah, I would say what's next for Hope Again. I'm going to keep doing what we're doing for now, making earrings that share the stories of women who have lost their babies, something that's a unique thing that I'm coming out with early April is what's called the Hopesake collection, kind of a play on the keepsake, or I'm imprinting words onto some earrings.
Okay.
And I'm lining this up right before Mother's Day so that maybe if it feels right, it could
Yeah.
be um, an intentional Mother's Day gift. Because, as you know, Peyton, Mother's Day is a really hard holiday for us moms who have babies in heaven that the culture we live in doesn't really make a lot of space to recognize.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
yeah, these earrings say things like angel mom and hold hope and always
I
loved.
love
Just
that.
these little sayings that could be a sweet gift, a
Yeah.
token to say, hey, I see you and your journey, and I still want to celebrate that on
I
this
love
day. So
it.
that's coming out in April. And then, yeah, down the line, I would love to resume the book that I started writing. I'm about halfway through it.
Wow. That's
A
exciting.
practical, yeah, it's a practical resource for women walking through miscarriage grief, where I talk a lot about my faith and how we bring God into our pain. It's a resource that I wanted to find when I was walking through my own grief and asking those questions, and kind of what I was sharing earlier about
Yeah.
how the gospel story mirrors our story of pain. Like, I get into all of that. So that's what I'm working on. And yeah, I'm just honored every single day that women would entrust this
Yeah.
platform with their stories, that they would share them with me, that um, they would respond to the other women's stories who are being posted and saying, hey, I'm so sorry for your loss, or I admire your strength. And
Yeah.
just this community that's being forged. And I sometimes just feel like I'm watching it happen. And it's
Mhm.
a beautiful thing and a beautiful testament to the strength of women who've lost babies, but also to this innate desire we all have to find hope again.
Yeah. It is a beautiful thing. How can people find you
Yeah,
on
well,
website, Instagram, that kind of
yes,
thing?
we're on Instagram at Hope Again Collective. And the website's also hopeagaincollective.com. And that's where you can find us. So I'd love to
Awesome.
connect with you.
Very cool. Thank you so much, Rachel. I really appreciate you.
Thank you, Peyton. God bless you.